least that. What is the I've been trying everyone. One of them.
There's 2 seats right here.
He's a good guy.
Great, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. I am Tori Jackson, so it's nice of you all to be here. And to start the meeting, I actually invited our college vice president of academic affairs, Chad Conway.
Oh, he does.
Welcome.
There's no question about it.
And I want to glad to see you all, and welcome to our campus at WVU Parkersburg. We got a lot of things going on around here, so I just want to say thanks for choosing us to come for your meeting. And just to let you know, we have a unique partnership with the Caperton Center, where we have high school students on our college campus, and we do a few things over there. I found out this morning to confirm the number, but we have 82 high school students that take dual credit classes for the college level at the Caperton Center while they're doing their technical programs and all those things over there too. So, anyway, welcome to our campus, and I hope you have a great meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Dr. Jackson and I have been drafted for a few opening words. First of all, it's good for everybody to get together on this. I think now that we finally have sorted out which of it is the ESC and which of it is the department responsibilities, maybe we can start trying to move forward on some of the things with the ESC. One of the challenges, as I see it, is going to be administration with the ESC. Whether a larger county with a staff person who has some time available can do a lot of those administrative duties, or whether someone actually needs to be hired to manage that ESC, and if they are hired, where those funds come through. I think those are going to be some of the challenges that different groups have as they look forward to trying to establish an ESC. And as we've discussed in our RESA 7, and we have a variety of larger counties and smaller counties, just listening to the superintendent's versions of this is what I see as a good thing, this is what I see as a problem, it appears that the smaller counties who needed the services of the RESA the most are least able to put some funds up sometimes to get those services started in the future. So that is going to be a challenge. And I think several people have expressed that to the legislature at the LOCIA meeting that AJ and some others attended. They heard one of the legislators ask the question of were some of the smaller counties not able to get some of the services they had previously, and if they weren't, what could be done about that? So I think a lot of people realize it may not be a perfectly smooth transition, and there may be some hiccups along the way, but we'll try to make some meaningful suggestions.
Okay. My opening words are going to involve a diagram, right? So I actually was teaching, I teach broadcast reporting as one of my courses, and I was teaching some story structure to them actually yesterday. And it made me think of this meeting, so I just want to share something with you. I cannot draw a straight line, so don't judge me on that. But there's actually a story structure that exists that's called the GIVE axis. All right? So you have a G and an I here, and you have a B and an E. All right, the G is good fortune. The I is ill fortune. And then you have a beginning and an end. And this will relate to RESA in a moment, okay? I'm going to show you how this works, though, have all of you seen the movie called The Lion King? Possibly. Okay. Let me just demonstrate how this works. The Lion King starts with some good fortune. In the beginning of the movie, Simba was born. You remember that? Okay. All right, so we have Simba born. And then we're going to go down here because then we have the death of Simba's father. Very tragic time for him, right? So then Simba runs away, and if you recall, Scar takes over the kingdom. Scar was the villain in this case. So Scar is here. So they have a time of ill fortune, as most movies would. That's why you watch them. And then at the end, Simba decides to return, and he is able to defeat Scar and take back the kingdom, and then happily ever after, right? Well, let me share with you one more, because this relates a little bit more, okay? We're also going to talk Cinderella, briefly. You guys know the story of Cinderella, right? She actually starts with ill fortune. How does she start with ill fortune? It's pretty simple. Her father is no longer living, and she's forced to live with an evil stepmother, right? So in the middle of her ill fortune, she meets someone else. Anyone? Who does she meet? The fairy godmother. And the fairy godmother is able to make her life all the much better because she is able to take her to the ball. So she goes to good fortune when she goes to the ball, okay? And then she's going to come back down because the clock is going to strike 12 and she has to run away. And then she's going to come down here and she's going to lose her shoe, which I cannot draw, but that's a shoe. Okay, I should practice it and it didn't even look like what I practiced. So, it's a shoe. Maybe I'll label it so we know it's a shoe. This is her glass slipper. Okay. Then the prince comes with the glass slipper, which amazingly is the only part of the story that didn't change back to what it originally was, but we're not going to go there. And he marries her, and she lives happily ever after. Okay. So when I was thinking about this, it reminded me, this axis, the vertical and horizontal axis, reminded me of cost benefit. Okay? So if we turn this into cost, and we turn this into benefit, this is what we have to decide on RESA, in my mind. Cost benefit, not RESA as it is now, but as we move forward to something else. Every county has to make a decision. So where do we start with RESA in the beginning? Do we start with good fortune? Okay. So the cost, actually, if we look at it through cost benefit, it was good fortune for us in an opposite way because we didn't have to pay anything. So we might have been down here because cost was low. I switched the axis, but you're right about good fortune. So now we have come up to the point where things were good for a while, and now we've come back down to where we've lost money. So that to us becomes ill fortune in a way though, because there's no money. So dollar signs are what you've already said is a big factor that we have to consider. Funding, administration, big factors. But what I would like to present to you today is that you all have a glass slipper. Okay? Each one of us, each county, I'm from a small county, he's from a larger county. We're all from different sized counties. And this glass slipper will amazingly fit all of our feet if we're able to figure out how it works for us. So what we want to do today, of course, is begin to develop a system that allows that glass slipper to fit despite whether your county is small and has no extra money, or if your county is larger and has a nice budget that could actually assist in extra funds. So that is how I would present it to you today. And the next thing I think we want to do is actually go around and introduce everyone.
I'm Howard Seefer, attorney with Bowles Rice and general counsel to the School Board Association. Also, one of the attorneys who defended the Nicholas County Board of Education and prosecuted the suit against the state.
Kim Rhodes, Superintendent of Summers County.
Howard O'Connell, School Board Association.
Tim Sanders, President of the Board of Education.
Mary Jane Portland, Superintendent of 14. Charlotte Hutchins, Superintendent of Raleigh County. Deirdre Klein, Superintendent of Wyoming County.
Dave Moore, Senior College Analyst, House Education.
PJ Rogers, Board of Education, Nicholas County. Dan Ness, Board Member of Wood County.
Lawrence Asperger, President of Wood County Board.
David Everson, Margaret County Board Member.
Jen Schmidt, County Board of Education President. Paul Dappelini, Superintendent, Tyler County, and Vice President of the Association of School Administrators. Mary Jo Thomas, Board Member in Marion County.
Brad Chamber, Board Member of Jackson County.
Bill Jones, Board Member of Hudson County.
We serve as interim check director of RESA 6.
Kathy Hines,
comprehensive. My superintendent always tells me to tell people I'm from Wood County in case I say anything embarrassing. I'm from Jackson County.
I'm Howard McCall, the Director of the Support Association. First of all, I want to thank everyone who is attending today. We've really had a lot of good work on this process. It is very intricate, as we've already heard. There is the need, I think, for us to look toward the future rather than the past. And one of the things that came out of our regional meetings, we've had 5 out of 10, is a desire for county boards to have some kind of guide or module or directions on how to understand the terminology that's included in House Bill 2711. There is quite a bit of terminology. We'll get to that in a moment. And also to begin to develop, where do we start? How do we get going? What are the things we need to consider? And that's one of the things we will concentrate on today. I do like the illustration of where we are. I think that's very accurate, very apropos. One thing I would point out too is that I'm noticing as I travel throughout the state, and we've had the regional meetings, telephone calls, emails, all the means of communication you get. And my observation is, and I think will bear out today, people are building structures before they actually know what they want in terms of services. And that can probably work, but that's really not, I don't think, the right way to start. Really, I think a county board or county boards need to figure out, working with their superintendent, who is the informational leader of the board, what kind of services you feel like you can get. And this code says from a regional level, and it also says statewide too, of an ESC or some other entity or statewide. If you can figure out as a county board what type of services you can get, then you can figure out the structure that best delivers those services. It may be a cooperative arrangement, which is already in the code, but it's also been liberated a great deal by the legislature to make it more flexible. Or it may be an ESC, Education Services Cooperative, which could be the remnants of a RESA or a RESA. Or it may be a combination, or as some board members have told me after regional meetings, we're not going to do any of this, okay? And the reasons for that vary. There's the idea that we're a county that doesn't need to have regional services, and we really don't feel like we are in the position to share with other counties, and that may create inequity, but that's just an inequity that's been created through conversation. I think that inequity can be overcome. The other thing too is we need to, as an association, I'm speaking for the organization in that regard, this is entrepreneurial. This is not the way it's always been done. This is looking toward the future, finding out the services you need, and then being entrepreneurial, nimble, changing services if they don't work, getting services that are newly needed, and things like that. And a lot of structure may prohibit you from doing so, but I think that's the spirit of the statute. Along those lines, we have been trying to get in communication with entrepreneurs throughout the state who develop and build businesses to get their input, because I think that can lend a great deal of our conversation. The other thing, besides building a module today, which I think we'll actually finish at the fall conference, hopefully, is to then develop a template for moving to a cooperative arrangement or an ESC. And we've got a checklist. You'll get that. You've already gotten that, and you'll get it again. And the 2 subcommittees, or 1 subcommittee, can look at that. The checklist on the template really needs to have some things added to it, a little bit of meat added to the structure itself, such as board of directors. There needs to be more information in regard to how you choose the board of directors. There needs to be also information about how the meetings are followed, the bylaws, things like that. And that's what the idea of a template is. And again, we can get started on that today and then have a subcommittee work on that. The end result of this, I believe, will be the people who are most directly affected by this actually coming up with a means of making good structures, good rationale for choosing services, and then good ways to evaluate that, and also have superintendents lead this effort in regard to their informational leadership role. There is a role for boards in this, and so many board members have said, we don't have time to do this, we don't feel like we should be doing this, we feel like the superintendent should bring us this information about services we previously have gotten, and then let us decide from there as a board what we should be getting in the future. And I think we can begin to see the importance of that today. Next thing is, when the fall conference is held, we plan on finishing most of this work because Delegate Perry, State Board Member Perry, his committee needs this, a product by October 10, so we've really got to get moving to get that done. And the tight timeline is the best thing going for us. If we had 3 years to do this, it would take 3 years. If we have a month, we have a month to get done. So that's how things work. I think you can that right. So anyway, I do thank you for coming. I know this has been a labor. I know in the regional meetings this comes up all the time. But you know, we're not very often as organizations given this opportunity by the legislature. It's usually prescribed. But now we have an opportunity, as said in the August 5th meeting, to really make a difference and make this our program. So thank you, and I think we have a good program as far as the agenda lined out today. And I would ask that you all be involved, but I don't think I need to. I think you will. So thank you.
I've been asked to share an overview of what we're here for today. I'll pass this around. As Howard has said, the School Board Association's fall conference is upcoming a week from.
It's on the 8th and 9th.
And we're going to be distributing a document like this at the conference. It's a challenge was to describe what this is all about without getting down into the weeds so much that school board members got confused about what we're doing. So I tried to choose the high points, things that I think characterize the different parts of this discussion. Let's get this out on the table. I don't want to go through the detail, but I do want you to have a look at it. And I'd like to draw your attention to what I consider to be 8 points that are sometimes missing from these discussions or are misinterpreted in these discussions. I brought 30 copies. I hope we have enough for everybody. We don't, some of them may not be sharing. We began on the front of it by broke these Hospital 2711 issues into 2 parts. And the first part, as you can see, has to do with the dissolution of RESAs and the legislature's energizing of cooperative agreements and ESCs, which is an educational service cooperative. So I tried there to, well, there's all kinds of details about what happens when a RESA dissolves that you see in the law itself, just to give the board members a sense. Be sure they understand there will be no RESAs on July 1st next year unless the legislature does something different in the meantime. And that there is some question about what happens to the office building, the property belonging to RESA, the records of RESA. And that's reflected in the summary here. Also, I try to make clear that RESAs are not receiving any funds directly through the state aid formula this year. There's some confusion about that on the part of some school board members. And then try to introduce board members to the 2 notions that we've all talked about before. And this is something I want to come back to because it's so important. The first is the authority the county boards of education have to enter into cooperative agreements with one another. And the fact that this has been in the law for a long time, but it was restricted, in a sense, to cooperative agreements that had to do with providing instruction in particular areas. And it also required the State Board of Education to approve the cooperative agreement before it could go into effect. So I tried to get across the point now that cooperative agreements can involve much more than just offering, beefing up instruction in a niche area, but rather has to do with all manner of county level functions in the county board of education. Can be the subject of cooperative agreements among school boards. And importantly, these agreements no longer require State Board of Education respect to county level functions in a way that makes both boards more efficient. And then we talk about on the next page the educational services cooperatives, what I call ESCs. And tries to give people a notion of what they involve. Again, without getting down into the weeds, it sometimes confuses people who don't deal with this every day. And an important point makes here is that to form an educational services cooperative, county boards have to enter into, back on the first page, a cooperative agreement. An ESC is the result of a cooperative agreement. So this is like there's the ESC world over here and the cooperative agreements world over here. There are cooperative agreements, and one of them, a really powerful one, all kinds of possibilities, is a cooperative agreement to form an educational services cooperative with one or more other school boards to provide a single service or multiple services on a regional basis. But an ESC is formed through a cooperative agreement which comes under the umbrella of this first provision. So it's not an either or. It's ESC is a product of a particular type of cooperative agreement. I say it that way because the legislature used the terminology cooperative agreement when it talked about those agreements in general. But then when it got to the ESC part, it said boards may enter into a cooperative agreement and establish an ESC. And it's confusing to people who, especially the lay people that are on school boards, so partially words that carefully, it's confusing. So I think of, and I tried to get this across in here, the ESCs as being one grant of cooperative agreement that is available to county boards of education as they try to secure services or procure services that they can't afford themselves in the capacity we have received from RESA. And in becoming more efficient with respect to county water functions. So the summary of the ESCs on this page is very summary, but I think it makes the most important points that school board members can do. We're going to be making these points in the presentation at the fall conference. One favor I would ask of everybody here is that when you have time to read this document, if you think it's a really important point about the recent revisions of the House Bill 2711 that you think school board members really need to know in order to grasp what's going on, or a really important point about cooperative agreements in general, or about educational services cooperatives, if you would drop me a line or put word to me through talk to a caller or somebody as to what you suggest I add or take away from this to make it better informed school board members to read this. I'd really appreciate it, because in the end our goal is to have everybody understand what the alternatives are, how they work, what's involved. And if I've left something that you think is critical to that understanding and consideration out of here, I really invite your input so that we can make it more explanatory. If you then turn to the next page, I've broken off and treated separately what I call the end of regional idea generating school board meetings and the rise of the county superintendent's council. I think it's been very alluded to the fact that there was early on, and I think there still is some misinformation about what these quadrants are about. When the superintendent's in a quadrant get together and meet. And I've heard from many people who are very busy and don't have time to dig down into this, that they thought that the new educational services cooperatives would be run by the superintendents in the quadrant. And I had one superintendent say, "This is my dream. I don't have to deal with school board members and other people on the governing board." As you can see from this, that is not, this is a separate part of the law. It ordinarily wouldn't even be in this handout, except that people have confused them. The way I think about it is that school boards for a number of years now have been required every 2 summers to attend a regional meeting of all the other school boards in our region. And their charge was to brainstorm ways that county boards of education could collaborate with each other to become more efficient. And then to report those ideas up the chain to the State Board of Education and the legislature. So the theory, I think, was that people who know how these things work might come up with better ideas than people who are looking at it from 30,000 feet, and that there may be some good ideas that then either the state board through its policy role or the legislature and legislation might consider. For whatever reasons, and we don't need to go into that, I interpret what's happened here, and it may be inaccurate, but it's the way I remember it and can recall it, is they've switched that idea-generating institution from these biennial summer meetings of all the school boards in the region to the school superintendents in each of 4 quadrants of the state. And the Collier County Superintendent's Advisory Council really isn't one body. It's a way that all the county superintendents in quadrant 1 get together at least once a year, but they can get together as often as they think it's helpful to do so. And they are to brainstorm ways that county boards and school districts can cooperate with one another in order to reduce costs, operate more efficiently. And then there's a structure in this part of the law by which those ideas then get reported up to the state superintendent, to the State Board of Education, and to the legislature. And on top of that, the superintendents in a quadrant are required at least once a year to discuss whether there are laws on the books or policies of the State Board of Education that are holding them back, and that if modified or repealed would allow the county boards of education to do better the job that they've been assigned. And superintendents in doing that, the way it's worded, it sounds like they get input from their own boards as to what laws and policies could be modified or repealed. They bring those to a meeting. They discuss those and other ideas that have to do with laws and policies that would be as obstacles. And then there's a structure by which that all gets reported up the chain to the legislature. Either that is there, I suppose. So the legislature might assess some of these ideas and maybe adopt them. But there's nothing, as we know, in all the provisions about this County Superintendent's Advisory Council and the quadrants that has to do with how you form an educational services cooperative or how you enter into a cooperative agreement or what you do. The closest connection between the two are these ideas. They're all ideas for collaborating at a county level. So I suppose at that level you can say that there is a relationship. But there's nothing in the law that says that the superintendents in a quadrant can form an ESC by themselves, or if they run the ESC, or they're responsible for the cooperative agreements. In my book, it's just an idea-generating mechanism that has to occur. Instead of just saying, send us your ideas when you have them, forces people to focus a couple of times a year maybe on those issues. And that's a point we're going to try to get across to the school board members who, if we had school superintendents who early on were confused about this, but now are I'm sure we have school board members. So this is just a blender full of laws, and they don't see the distinctions between the different parts. Dr. O'Connor asked me to prepare a glossary, which appears on page 4. It's one reason the summaries of ESE and cooperative agreements are so short, because we use terms there that we just define back here in more detail. So if somebody wants a little more information about who is on the governing council, for example, the definition of governing council here will help to inform them about that. We mentioned in the summary, for example, that the ESC governing council has to adopt bylaws, but we don't say anything about what they provide. Well, back here in the glossary, we hit the high points of what the law says should be in those bylaws, and so forth. So, Dr. McCall and I picked out some terms that we felt probably would benefit from a little more definition here. The big one at the bottom of page 5 is the annual plan. Every educational service cooperative has to annually consider a plan for the coming year and long range to address some of these issues about how we can benefit from collaborating among counties. And the legislature there told us that the types of programs and services that might be addressed in the plan don't have to be, but might be. Like, we're going to give you some examples of what we're talking about. I think they're very informative. There are 23 of them, and we may come back to these later today. We're talking about educational services cooperatives could possibly accomplish and what cooperative agreements can accomplish. But as I think the definition makes clear, you're not required to include all these things in your annual plan. Just the legislature's way of saying these are the sorts of things that we think you should consider. And I suspect some of these percolated up from those biennial school board meetings and were reported up the chain to the legislature and the state board of education in time spans. Before we go on to the last 2 pages of this, I thought I'd share with you 8 points that I touched on a few of them already, but I think they're really important. The first one is the misinformation. Okay? And the biggest piece of misinformation we've had, probably closely bottom up with our rest in a moment, is that these quadrants and these meetings of the superintendent somehow include provisions that give county superintendents decisive control over the BNCs and cooperative agreements. Now, the two are completely separate structural. In concept, they're the same. We're talking about the same thing, ways we can cooperate to get things done. But you really could rip page 3 out of this and still understand educational services cooperatives and cooperative agreements. The second point is the one I made at the outset, and I think it's so important, and that is that it's not a case that there are cooperative agreements over here and there are ESCs over here. As I pointed out, an ESC is formed because county boards enter into a cooperative agreement. It's the result of a cooperative agreement among the counties. So it's not an either or. It's one of the range of possibilities of a cooperative agreement, and it's one that has captured a lot of attention because of the issue of replacing RESAs, for example, and some of the services. A third point is that there's nothing that I see in any of this legislation that requires any county board ever to enter into a cooperative agreement with another county board, whether it's to form an ESC or to do anything else. It might be short-sighted, you can argue, but a county board can say, we're going to be our own little world here, and we don't need the help of other counties to make our county level functions more efficient or to procure services to educate our children. I'll leave it to you to decide whether there is any such county board. We can really say that with a straight face, but there is no requirement that anybody do anything. Okay? There's no compulsion. The fourth point is a little technical, but it's really important. The law says the county boards that wish to form an educational services cooperation do so through a cooperative agreement. Now, I've seen somebody's suggestion of a cooperative agreement to do this, and I'm not being critical of that agreement, but I want to put it in perspective. That agreement says we, the following school boards, agree that we're going to form an educational services cooperative to do maybe specify what we're going to do. And that's basically what it says. And everybody signs it because the board's approved it. And then I guess the thought is those boards or representatives of those boards will get together and hammer out the bylaws and the structure and all of that stuff. As I read the law, that's not necessary. As I read this law, it's saying that that cooperative agreement does create the ESC. There's not a step in between where you must say, okay, we're all on board, we agree to form an ESC, and then we have a separate document that we all agree to that here's who's going to be on the governing council, and et cetera, et cetera. Think about when you buy a house. You sign a contract to purchase a house, most of us have done that. You don't first sign a contract saying, I agree to sign a contract to purchase a house, or I'm going to try to sign a contract to purchase a house. You just sign a contract that tells you, say you're going to buy it, where the house is, how much you're going to pay, what your commitment's conditioned on, when the closing is going to be. So my lawyer's eyes tell me that to form an educational services cooperative, and this is a technical point, but I think it's important, there's one cooperative agreement. It's worked out, all the terms are in it, and then the boards approve it, authorize the president or the superintendent to sign it on their behalf, and they go to town. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a document in between saying, we don't know that these counties are really serious about doing this. Let's make them sign a piece of paper saying that if enough other counties get on board, we will then cooperate in the process to try to form an ESC. I guess you could do that, especially if you're talking about a venture that requires the participation of so many boards to participate. It's kind of like a letter of intent. It's not binding. You could take that step. But if you just want to cut to the chase, I think the way the law is written is somebody drafts an agreement and then circulates it to the boards and asks them if they will approve it. The agreement will say, we are forming an education services cooperative to do the following things. It is formed under this provision of the law. It will only be formed if at least these county boards of education sign this agreement, or so many county boards of education sign the agreement, that they're going to be hanging out there alone with one other county providing more services than we can afford. And then there's some other legal provisions that need to go into it. I think that's how you do it. And then when it's finally signed, it will go into effect. It will go into effect when the last one signs it. It will go into effect on a certain date in the future. You can say it will never go into effect unless by such and such a date you have approval of the boards that have to approve. But to a lawyer's eyes, there's only one agreement that's required to form an ESC. If you want to have an intermediate step, that's fine. But just understand that the law only requires one agreement signed by the parties that are going to collaborate. A lot of the heavy lifting is then done by the governing board. You notice the bylaws are not in that agreement. The bylaws are adopted by the governing board once we have the ESC. And the governing board selects the ESC administrator. And the governing board employs people. And so that first step to get up and running requires a lot of discussion and some pro forma budgets, I suppose, and things like that to figure out whether it's worthwhile to become involved in. But this fourth point is that it's that agreement that creates the ESC. It's not an agreement and then something that creates the ESC. Fifth is that there's nothing in this law that says that whatever it happens, there has to be one ESC in the exact same footprint as each RESA. And it's to in some way take the place of the RESA. Probably an excellent idea, depending on your perspective as a school board and how you view those things, but there's no requirement. If the legislature had intended that we have 8 ESCs that assume the footprints of the 8 RESAs and to the best of their ability offer the same services, they can say that. They can say that. So you could have a school board that says, we're not going to participate in the ESC, whether it's replacing a RESA or not. You could, a year from now, 2 years from now, look at the situation and see that there aren't ESCs in some parts of the state that have the same footprint as the RESA that in place. So there's not a requirement to do that. I've heard people say, yeah, there's going to be 8 ESCs that have to be, and we're going to be in the same ESC with all the counties that we're in our RESA, and there are all kinds of reasons you might want to do that in terms of the ease of transition of property and offices and personnel and programs, but there's not a requirement. Sixth, there is some ambiguity in this law, in my opinion, about who is on the governing board of an ESC. Every ESC must have a governing board. And the law is clear that that governing board, Dr. Paul referred to as the board of directors, that's a good analogy, has at least the superintendent and one board member from every county that is a part of that ESC. But then it has some language that is a little bit equivocal, in my opinion, as to whether indeed we have to have on our board a representative of a higher education institution or a CTC that is in one of those counties that forms the ESC. One way you read the law, it looks like we do. Another way you read it, looks like it's optional with the governing board. Likewise, the law talks about some other possible members or required members, depending upon how you read it, of the governing council. It talks about one non-superintendent chief instructional leader employed by a member of county. It talks about a school principal employed by a member of county. It talks about a teacher employed by a member of county. each of those things, the representatives of higher ed, community colleges, instructional leader, the principal, the teacher, are preceded by the sentence that says the following, if any. And one way to look at that says we don't have any colleges or universities in our county, so we don't have any representatives. If any means if you have one. But another way to look at it is that the governing council is charged with deciding whether, even if there is a college or university in one of these counties, whether they'll be represented on the governing council. The governing council will decide whether a teacher or principal or instructional leader will be on the governing council. The one thing that it seems to be clear is that whether we have representatives of business and industry is up to the governing council. They are not mandatory members of this board. My guess is that if push came to shove and this were tested somehow, somebody challenged the composition of the governing board, as the language of the statute now stands, like I say, no arguments even though I put my money on the interpretation that says it's up to the governing board, whether it has a principal, a chief instructional leader, a teacher, or a representative of colleges or universities. And it makes a little sense to me. What if you formed an ESC solely to for efficiencies in your transportation system? To plan bus routes, to make them the most efficient. Why would you need an instructional leader? Why would you need one of the college representatives? Why would you need a teacher? On the other hand, if you're talking about some programs that help educate people to go into the workforce, or you're talking about instructional curricular matters, it might make sense to have those people involved. So I'm thinking that if I try to define a purpose behind this, I'm thinking that my money's on that it's up to the governing council whether it wants any of those other people. And David may have some insights into that based on his familiarity with the legislative process.
Well, when you read things, you try to, you know what you meant, but you're always subject to how other people didn't write it. And the fact that it says, subject to the Assembly of the governing board, having some way to do with that is whether it's required beyond there or only the governing board is necessary. When you look at it, it depends on what the cooperative is formed to do. And looking at kind of some of the things that other cooperatives and other states have on it, which of the things that they want what the board is working on. If in fact what it's doing, or what Lisa is currently doing with regards to alternative certification, having some things that are there on the workforce company, the other kinds of things that we're going to watch out into, the business industry, higher ed, community colleges. So it's what along makes some sense. But if the board isn't branching out into those areas or the cooperatives, required number on them.
Well, I can,
Even if they do exist in the area.
you could
I agree with you.
hypothesize a situation, let's say Kanawha County and Putnam County formed an ESC. You could have more representatives of colleges and community colleges and higher education on your governing board than you do people from the county boards that are involved. So that I think also lend some support to the notion that the counties get together and form an ESC whose governing board consists of the superintendents and the board members. And then those people decide as a matter of policy, which can be changed depending upon as the needs of the ESC changes, as to whether they want to have representatives of colleges and teacher and principal and instructional leader and so forth. But I did want to sensitize you to that fact. If somebody said, we want to form an ESC that is as protected against legal challenge as possible, I'd say, well, put all those people on your governing board, and then you don't have to worry about having to defend what if any means. But I rather think that the reasonable interpretation of this release David has suggested, and that is that you have to have the county superintendents, and you have to have the board members, but you don't have to have all these other people there. It just makes it clear you can if you want to, but it would be helpful to you in performing your mission. The second point is about the ESC administrator. We have an you have to have an administrator there at ESC. That's clear. And under the law, that's a will and pleasure appointment. The governing board selects the ESC administrator. You have to have one. They can fire the ESC administrator or sever relations with one, whatever it is to say, for any reason or no reason at all, as long as there's no legal reason. That's what we call a will and pleasure of employees. A point I'd like to make here, it seems to me from the language of the statute, that all the other staff in an ESC might have are employees, regular or part-time. But it doesn't say that the ESC administrator is an employee of the ESC, like all the other people are. And I raised that point because something one of you said, by way of introduction. You could conceivably, I think, have an ESC administrator who is already employed by one of the school boards, is an employee of that board, and they agree to make that assistant superintendent or director, whoever it is, free them up to do what's necessary as the ESC administrator, to propose an annual plan, to propose a fiscal agent, if that's something they want to do. Some other things that the law says that the administrator does. Depending upon how many services your ESC provides and how many counties are participating, it could be a very small one where it'd be hard to justify having a regular full-time administrator with a paycheck paid for by the ESC. I think there's room in here to hire that person as an employee, but there's also room in here to borrow somebody who is, in the eyes of the law, an employee of one of the county boards and performs those services for the ESC. So there's some flexibility there, I think. And then finally, and this is a challenging point, and Cinderella and the Lion King drives it home. Money drives a lot of this process. It's a big concern. And so we have the grants, and the legislature could decide to appropriate money to ESCs, and the different counties could contribute. But I challenge you to not just think in terms of money. Now, you can pool resources that consist of personnel, computers, or other things that you have in your school system. And while equipment and your own people can't always get the job done, I think those are assets we have to think about when we talk about what we're contributing to an education services cooperative to make it work. And while it's all lubricated with money in the end, and that's really important, let's not lose sight of other things that we might do: time, talent, and other things like facilities that we might be able to lend to educational services cooperative and help advance the cause, participating in counties functioning more efficiently. So those are the points I draw from this, and I don't know if I want to pause here to see whether any of those points don't seem right, or if there's anything anybody else wants to say before we go into the exercise.
If you remember where it says the employees will be state employees as far as PEIA and retirement. Okay, now does that mean the rest of Section 18A is not going to apply?
That's how I read it. It's
So you
employees of the ESC.
So the new governing board will have to come up with their own Section 18A.
Well, in terms of benefits, and in terms of posting vacancies and how you fill them, much like RESA do today. Every RESA has a policy that addresses financial matters, personnel matters, things of that sort. And many of them, as shorthand, say we're going to follow 18A for the filling professional vacancies, and we're going to follow 18A in terms of the minimum pay for our employees or whatever. You could do that, but there's no compulsion to do that as I read this, except that your employees have to be allowed to participate in PEIA. PEIA is a qualified other number of hours they work in the days they work, and they are eligible to participate in the retirement system, in which case that would require an employer's contribution, whether you want to pay or not. You'll see.
Council will be able to make the location for such a
don't see anything in the law that requires people who get continuing contracts or treated as probationary or continuing. I think there's the authority there for the governing board to say we're going to treat our employees that way, but I don't see a requirement.
About the money. The question was asked of Lucia, and I think Dave somewhat clarified the question because folks testifying didn't really know the answer. But the assets of each RESA, for instance, if two RESAs were decided to form an ESC, the assets of those RESAs belong to those RESAs, and they will be, if they form an ESC, those funds, vehicles, the office of materials that were purchased, that's something that really, I think, needs answered, and how, once those assets are combined, how you want to do that, as far as title transfer of the vehicles, maybe under a county right now. I believe Dave said that those assets did belong to the RESA, am I correct, according to code? Well, the statute has a process for resolving and distributing if the counties that substantially form the RESA decide they want to form a collaborative, or decide how they're going to divide them among the member counties that form the RESA if they resolve it, some of which, or the third option is if the state and some of that stuff have their business. Right, that was another part of my question. For instance, a county within one of the RESAs decides they do not want to be in the new ESC. Is there a formula for determining give them one or one? How do you
But the way this is worded, it doesn't give you a bright line mathematical test. But it says that if an ESC is formed, it covers substantially the same territory in terms of counties that the RESA covers. So it doesn't have to be exact. It seems to allow for there being a county or two, depending on how many counties are in the RESA. I guess it could be a bigger or smaller part of the effort. But if an ESC is formed that steps basically into the footprint of the RESA, maybe with some exceptions, then this law says all of RESA's, everything RESA owns goes to that ESC. But the mechanical question of how that happens is going to be an interesting one. Because my experience has been in RESA office buildings, if you find the deed to where's the deed to this building, the RESA title, sometimes there isn't one. Sometimes there is one, but it says the State Board of Education, or it says, it's got all the county boards' names on it that are part of the RESA. And the same thing with vehicles, they're all titled. And one of the, you don't need to get that too far down this road, but one of the little stumbling blocks we're going to come up with are that if you have a title to your vehicles with RESA X's name on them, and you wait until after June 30th to transfer them, someone's got to sign the title saying we convey this to this ESC if that's what's happening, or else motor vehicles won't issue you a title in the name of the ESC. Well, there are no RESAs after December 30th and June 30th, so if you haven't gotten around to it until then, I'm sure there will be a way to take care of it, but it's going to be a circuitous route. It's just a matter of saying, hey, you used to be the director of RESA, could you come sign this? You're not the director anymore. You can't do this. So the legislature's saying all that stuff comes to the RESA in that case, but the documentation of that for legal purposes, which is really important.
One to that, to add to that. So if you don't have an executive director anymore after October, how do you then, we have some real complications in this. The executive director obviously is the person who, with a co-sign, facilitates all of the property, okay? So if you no longer have that position, then you no longer have someone to help with the resolution of assets and so on.
That's why talking about this early in the year isn't too late, because we need to get these things worked out while we still have these structures there. I think you may find, I haven't looked at the statute or your own policies, but it may be that you have to have an executive director. You can't go- It's like you have to have a superintendent. Maybe appointing somebody, maybe even employee paychecks have to be signed, or have the facsimile signature of the executive director and the fiscal agent or something. So that's another. The mechanics of this are going to be vary from county to county. Now, if there is not an ESC that steps basically into the footprint of a RESA, then the law says that all the counties that participate in the RESA will agree how the building, the personal property, and the pertinent records of the RESA will be distributed among those counties. So then the counties are going to have to get together and say, you know, we weren't able to form an ESC that includes even half of our counties or 2/3, or there isn't a bright line. So we need to decide where these stuff's going to go. And then the mechanics have to be followed after that. So that discussion is going to have to occur. My advice would be well before June 30, or else we might buy into all kinds of expense and issues and trying to transfer titles and so forth. If the counties can't agree, then it all goes to the state boards or the State Department.
Would it be a good step for current RESA regional councils to say to themselves, let's come to Briggs, let's do a cooperative agreement, set up an ESC to dissolve those services or continue the services that we can for a period of time, just to make sure that there's no problem with the end of the year coming too soon?
We'll do that. And that suggests another point that isn't clear. We're not doing all this so that on midnight on June 30 we sign a bunch of agreements. This could be done now. You could form an ESC tomorrow. And the counties that participate could agree that everything comes to the ESC, and that's you can end a RESA earlier than June 30. And I think you could have coexisting RESA and ESC. There's nothing in the law that says one or the other. It just says at midnight June 30 there aren't any RESAs.
So the bylaws of your ESC could then be developed further, or not bylaws, the components of your ESC could then be developed further in the future. In other words, you could always go back to your governing council and look at additional things that you may have.
And you could structure an ESC like we do. So they go for years not offering a particular service, and then they offer it.
Yeah.
The ESC, a careful drafting of the bylaws and of the original agreement will be important, because you think about things like that. Do we need flexibility? There may be counties that say, I don't want to buy a blank check. I'll just join an ESC if this is what it does, these three things and nothing more. We don't want to be involved in more. You can address that in the agreement. Or they might say, we don't know what's coming down the road, and it seems we've gotten along in the past for the most part. Let's leave it open-ended so that we can add to the menu of services and delete some services in the future as determined by the governing board or by 2/3 of the members of the board. All those decisions can be made before you sign that agreement forming the ESC. And you're suggesting, I don't need to think about it, but it may assist with the transfer of assets and records and so forth from releases to ESCs.
Clarification, we had 8 counties recently approved site on the ESC. There's all that complicated ESC.
We had 8 counties in the RESA and only 4 agreed to form an ESC. In my mind, that isn't substantially the same territory as the RESA covered, and I question whether that's what the legislature meant when it wrote the bill the way it did. I'm thinking it'd be helpful if they had given us a rule, but they didn't, and it has to mean something. So at least one county could agree not to participate, and surely that's okay, and they wouldn't have written it that way. What percentage of the counties or what part of the region doesn't participate and still falls within that rule is a question that if you possibly can, you might want to avoid by convincing enough of the counties to participate so it doesn't become an issue. You might think, well, no one will ever challenge it. You know, as an auditor to come in and look at it, because these ESCs have to be audited every year. I assume RESA's on a final audit. It could be somebody who just doesn't like ESCs and files a lawsuit or something. So the point you raise is a really good one, and it's one that probably would motivate us to be as inclusive as we can. If our goal is to have an ESC that sort of inherits the what we say.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is that there are so many options available that you can do any combination. In service one, maybe 3 of the towns are participating, but in service 2, everybody can participate. So it sounds like that agreement can be all inclusive.
You could have an agreement, I think, that's written in a way that kind of works the way RESA's do now. Not every county in the RESA has to use RESA's audiologists, or speech therapists, or interventionists, or professional development. It could be written in a way that it's clear that while this county is participating in this ESC, it's not obligated to use any particular services.
And that's how the agreement might address
That's why this agreement is so important. I want to stress that this is the agreement, this cooperative agreement they're talking about to form an ESC, ought to the extent it can, and it's wise to do so, address some of these issues. If my county has reservations, we just want to join you for the speech pathologists and the audiologists, well, and we won't join if we have to purchase or support any other services. And through discussion that appears to be agreeable to the other counties, then you might want to consider how we draft that agreement so that your county, the intention is carried out, but it's not later misunderstood.
Can you allow, would it be, it's not a dissolution clause, but is there, would there be an opportunity to buy in clause? Like, for example, if my county only took advantage of 3 services, but now all at once we say, oh my gosh, we were short-sighted, we needed some others, that you could join that without having a whole new agreement, but you could do an amendment to it or
I'm
something.
sure.
Does anything prevent a county from participating in more than one?
That's really a good question. No, a county can participate in as many ESCs and cooperative agreements as it wants to, as long as it follows the rules of law here. So a county could conceivably be a member of multiple ESCs or cooperative agreements. And one other point that helps a little bit with some of these questions is the legislature specifically said that a county board that is not a member of an ESC can enter into a contract with that ESC for a particular service. So if you have an ESC that's providing, I'll use the audiologist thing again, and you've got a county that isn't part of it, they didn't join the ESC for some reason, or weren't even offered it, maybe they weren't part of the footprint of the reason nobody thought about it, and says, you know, if you purchase audiology services from your ESC, if you're willing to sell them to us, and it makes sense to the ESC, then they would be a customer of the ESC rather than a participating county in the ESC.
One of the other issues that came up was like, when we're talking about this, the risk is that if you're nonprofit, that we're advising on public entity right now as a RESA, we're advising nonprofit, considering cost of public implementation. There's some issues there, for example, if you have a service, it's the non-public hospital public service. State department board,
Generally speaking, just in its day-to-day operations, it would seem that the ESC does fall within the zone of bodies that the stakeholder risk would ensure, but there are some issues about some of the other activities and who's responsible for them. Well, with that, let's transition. Dr. O'Connor asked me to fashion a discussion question here. And you'll see it on page 6. And this has to do with what he said in his comments. First say, before we jump into an ESC or a cooperative agreement, what is it that we want? what services or collaborations that we identified as being ones we can take advantage of in our county to help us. We can't attract the audiologists that we need in our county. We don't want to live in our county. We can't pay them what they need. We really need to share an audiologist with other counties. That'd be very helpful. We've got enough of them, and that might go on our want list. We really like every service that RESA X provided in the past. Let's put all of them on our want list. What are some other things that we haven't done in the past collaboratively that we'd like to explore? And the transportation thing is an example of that. The example I gave before. What are some things we pay for right now that if we could get collaboratively through an ESC would free up some of our funds to do something else we want to do? So let's not think just about what we can get from an ESC, but some things we'd like to do that we can't afford right now unless we no longer have to hire a full-time audiologist. And we just have to pay for a third of an audiologist because that's all we need. So there's a process. If you begin from that perspective, do we even need to be a part of an ESC or a cooperative agreement? And if so, why? It's the why part here. And in taking this out to school board members and talking to them about it, the suggestion is that a school board right now ought to be going through that exercise. What is it? It falls within the area of concern of ESCs and other types of collaborative agreements that we would like to begin to getting the benefit of if we join an ESC or collaborative agreement. So the way I've worded it here is what questions might county superintendents and county boards of education ask themselves in order to identify needs and cost savings that should or could be met through a cooperative agreement with one or more other school boards, regardless of whether the agreement is an ESC or just a cooperative agreement. Let's leave that detail, that mechanical piece alone. But what is it that we need or we can save money with if we can cooperate with one or more other county boards in doing it? And then once we know what that is, we can talk about whether it's a good idea to do it through an ESC or a good idea to do it just through a cooperative agreement, which doesn't require bylaws, doesn't require administrators, doesn't require a governing board, doesn't have a lot of the administrative structure of an ESC. And I'm probably the least, the farthest from being an educator of anybody here in the room, so I don't know how you ask that question. What kind of thought-provoking questions would you have school board members and their superintendents discuss in order to really hone in on those things that, in the best of worlds, we would really like to get through collaborative agreement. Maybe we can't, but we'd like to explore it. Howard?
In talking in the regional meetings that issues come up, I think one of the best things the county board can do, and this ain't, I'm not an educator either, but one of the best things the county board can do, the only structures that have basically provided services to county boards in a way comparable to an ESC have been the RESA. So maybe a county board would be able to ask their superintendent to provide them a listing of the things that the RESAs have provided in total. And the RESAs do have that information that's been shared to the legislature and others. And then from there, have the county boards ask the second question, which is the pivotal question: which of these services did you actually take advantage of as your county board? And I think when you do that, you'll be able to see the pattern of the services you may need in the future, knowing you could expand it here based on what Howard said. So it's really kind of simple. Get the list of the services each RESA provides, and they do vary. And then once you get that list from the RESA, have the superintendent get the list and then share that with the board. And then the second most important part of that is have the superintendent point out to the board what services you actually utilize as a county board under that arrangement. And then the third part, of course, would be to move into these other areas that you may want to do in the future. That way you do two or three things. You find out what you use, you find out what you might be able to use, and you find out the things if you joined an ESC, which even could include all these things that you really won't need in the future, or at least as based on past. So that gives everybody some homework to do to get to this point out there.
Okay, so a good starting point for that discussion is, what does our RESA offer right now? Which of those services do we avail ourselves of, and which of those services do we not use, but we think we might need in the future? Okay, that's a good discussion question. It's a way to get the discussion started. I've passed around, by the way, the work product that Dr. O'Connell referred to, that came from the meeting at Stonewall when the tables got together and talked about the types of services they might share. That's very specific. This, I think, we're talking now about a more general question that we might get the superintendents and county boards to get them thinking about the purposes for forming some type of cooperative venture. Forget about how that's done right now.
And that might be done through a work session of the board?
Well, I think it could be, once you get that information, the superintendent provides that information, they give it to the board. Then the board, as part of their regular meeting or a special meeting work session, then would take a look at that, analyze that information, take a look at their needs. This is where superintendents really play a pivotal role. County board members do not run school boards in most instances. So as a result of that, the county board then would be given that information, and then the superintendent would say, well, then, with declining enrollment, with this factor or that factor, these are the services we think we will need next year or in the future. And then you lay out a roadmap for the county board that of the things that they can take advantage of or do need. I think what happens now is, based on what I've been told, and I don't have an opinion on this, whether one way or the other, what I think now happens is there's a blanket number of services. And the blanket number of services are advertised as services for the region, but I'm not sure, and I've been told, whether right or wrong, that not every county takes advantage of those blanket services, which may be a reason some counties are saying, we don't want to join a RESA-based ESC because we never used a lot of those services. And others are saying, well, yeah, we did, and we want to continue that. So that's the superintendent's in the room, that's your leadership there to get the board to really figure out the services you need in the future. So I think it could be done work session. I'm sure that part of that would be how much money we saved, how many personnel we didn't have to get, all kinds of things you could do to make that very relevant.
And that should be public.
Well, it would be public. You couldn't go in executive session without it. It would have to be public.
I guess what we're really talking about is a special meeting devoted to this issue.
Yeah, devoted to this issue would be the best way to handle
As
it.
opposed to a work
You
session
could do
in a
that.
regular?
Well, you could do it in a regular meeting, but I think Howard's correct. Not only does it do this, but it draws great attention to it. The board is trying to focus only on that one particular subject. There's not 2 or 3 things that are on the agenda, or it's not following the personnel hearing or student hearing. So I think it's a good thing to have a special.
And I think it would also dispel the grammar that's going on. It's, oh, it's just saying
Yeah, well, that's true too. I think that is an issue, but that may be a fading issue, but I think that is an issue.
And while we talk about these things, I'm gonna put our state board member on the spot. Maybe we can do away with everything.
AJ did that.
But what about WVS? I mean, if the old RESA 5 says, okay, we're not, none of us are joining anything.
All I can tell you is right now he's got places out there. Great representatives, Kirby Station, Charleston, and Long Beach, whatever the other regions are. I don't know where that's done or not. That's what it is right now.
I tell you, it's so important to be able to call now on my police 5. And he knows our counties and he knows me and he will just throw in there and he works so well with us and Zane did in the past. And that personalized touch with him is really important.
Absolutely. The only thing I can tell you that I think the recommendation those posters went out yesterday, I don't know where they were. There are 8 positions with WVIS went out yesterday. 4 of those positions will be housed here in the city of Charleston. The other 4 will be us to get one of these jobs. But there is no clarification on whether or not the WSC can actually hire a person that says we would project we for 15,000 plus years for 5 counties on WVIS. It's just typical. So if they just have one person in the quadrant, and the superintendent's felt, well, it's not enough, we need more assistance with that. Can the SC employ someone to assist with those calls, or is that all placed with the state? And you have that information. That's right.
Well, part of the answer to that is because Regis belongs to the state. The state would have to agree before it would allow an ESC to have a role in filling that role.
Well, if you were walking into this special meeting, what we call a work session of the school board, and you wanted to get them started brainstorming and thinking about, in a realistic way, about what they might be able to accomplish by joining forces with other school boards, what question would you ask them to consider? AJ?
Howard, at our last recent board meeting, we had this discussion, and we thought that we're talking with folks in RESA 1, possible collaboration for a super ESC with RESA 4, RESA 1. We thought that the most important thing that we would like to have is an entrepreneurial new director that maybe come from business sector more, as much as education background, someone that can get this thing off the ground and get it organized and you know we're ready to look past RESAs and move forward with this. And we thought that, I don't know if we consider that a service, but we thought it was probably the most important thing that we did early on. And I believe Mr. Price from Raleigh County, Mr. George from Fayette County have already been in touch with the state board attorney to even start looking at a job description for that person.
So in terms of deciding what we could do cooperatively, one thing a school board might consider is whether it would be a good idea to enlist some help in the form of a business person or somebody else who has fresh eyes, is looking at your operations from outside and may be able to identify areas in which you could benefit from collaboration.
I just wanted to add to, so I think it reinforces what AJ said. If you look at the list of potential things that you can fit in that master plan and propose to the board of directors, the county board members, and some it includes a lot of things that recently gotten into, whether it's the adult education, some virtual training things. This includes secondary, post-secondary, community, adult vocational, both rehab, fire training, many things we do. RESA's, as the form here, kind of started off in statute, I guess, or state board policy, looking at how counties cooperate and share jointly employed positions that can be more cheaply through RESA. So intermediate education agencies is kind of a model that a lot of states look at, which includes a lot of broad range of what does the community need, what the local board members think that they can do to help out with economic development, workforce training, or other kinds of things in the community, not necessarily typical public education kinds of things, things that they can work together with the community on a collaborative basis through an independent entity that couldn't do it through like a cooperative agreement with one of the county groups that put that on us. And going through the central office on the phone calls with an independent agency through a collaborative agreement to do some of the things that we do. It's not strictly limited to shared positions, shared services, kind of things, but really intermediate, like things don't aren't cheap well. It's really community to do counties already do that, and frankly, that's where they got in trouble. Sometimes with the legislative body that says, well, they're hardly doing anything to listen to the standard, but they're doing all this other stuff. Why shouldn't they? We're only putting $3 million into it, and getting $56 million in economic activity, and why are we throwing, why are we complaining? But it's been an issue, it's been government, capped dollar amounts, and almost the sequence of years, there's probably been many studies on this. I guess the one who stayed in those studies have to read. But I thought when you look at the introduced legislation, it was strictly in our collaborative agreement and RESA over last month. At least provide an opportunity as one of those types of cooperative agreements to serve as one of those larger collaboratives. Make them similar to the model that a lot of other states look at where it is an intermediate education agency. So it's the IAT, federal government. Let them be entrepreneurial. Take them out from the state board or legislature. We're not putting any money into it now. They're doing no counts to figure that out. So that's kind of a broader issue of just how the counties collaborate and share services. We don't always do that through a collaborative agreement among themselves. But they, in my view, limited because you're asking one benevolent county to do that. Somehow agree to, hire somebody who's going to live 3 counties away and be subject to hiring and additional and bidding and transfer laws and county board subject to abuse. So take a year and figure out what makes sense. Form them as soon as you can, but if they're not formed, come next June 30, figure out how to transfer what they distribute the assets. At least the House's discussion.
And one thing you suggested, I didn't mention before, but there's no requirement that all the ESCs that are ever going to exist and all the cooperative agreements that are ever going to exist have to be formed before June 30th next year. That date is important for purposes of ESCs and cooperative agreements because we're losing our RESAs or the services they provide at that time, but we could be 5 years down the road and decide to form a new ESC or cooperative agreement.
Many of those services, because we're now approving for the RESA, services the Barber County needs from RESA 7. Many of those services will be required at the beginning of school next year. We don't have any choice but to find a way to supply those services. And yeah, it's going to have to be, by June the 30th, we need to know where we're getting those services, or we're going to be in violation of federal laws. I don't want to go to prison for not being able to supply. Why not? But at RESA 7, Region 7, we talked about having a catalog of where services could be, certain services could be acquired. Because Barber County being exceptionally small and having very little to offer, we're going to have to look to and find places in our region that we can get the services that that are required. And like I said, I've made a list in our last 2 board meetings. We've had like 10 or 12 different things we've contracted through RESA 7 that we have to absolutely have. And so I think that catalog idea is a critical thing, especially for the number of counties we have that are quite small and would not be able to supply those interventionists, the audiologists, the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because we only have 3 or 4 students who need it. We do 2 days a month.
That's a very good point. I've added to the list, going back to the discussion by the board members and their superintendent, based on what we just said, that maybe a question would it be helpful in our discussion to have some fresh eyes brought in to help us talk about ways that we might collaborate in order to operate more efficiently and more effectively. What's it, yes?
When our central office did this similar review, that was really basically the first question that we asked was, what are the most critical services we receive from RESA? And then we asked ourselves, one, can we do it? Or two, would we need to join an ESC? Or could we, instead of joining an ESC, because of all the stuff that's involved in joining an ESC, could we do a cooperative arrangement with another county or a couple of counties? So there are some options, and it doesn't have to be an ESC. If you can't, and if you can do it yourself, oftentimes you're better off to do it yourself because it can be more efficient. But a lot of times you can't do it yourself. There are special education services that we just need a part of the person. Sometimes we need a big part of it, sometimes we need a little part of it, we just need a part of the person. That probably is the area where we need the most. And then, of course, I think there's still answers being formulated on sub-driver training and sub-teacher approval and some of those kind of things that still come down the pipe. But that was our first run through of, okay, what things do we do through RESA, and can we do them ourselves, or do we need help, do we need a cooperative agreement, do we need to join an ESC to do this? The more complicated an issue is, the more likely we're going to need to go into an ESC, I think.
I have a follow-up question for that. So if you choose to take services that were from RESA and you are able to do it in your county, here's a question I had a lot. That employee then will count in your county and in the state-based funding formula could be an overage employee, like it will be.
Well, you're already spending that money. And in essence, in some cases, you're really being more honest with your Board of Education because you're really paying those 4 technicians. So you're really that many employees over anyway. You're just hiring through RESA, so it doesn't show in the formula that you're over. You really have those people as employees. But I mean, as far as salary goes, you're paying those salaries. So now, instead of paying those salaries to someone else so that they pay the person, and it doesn't show on your account, now it's going to show on your account.
Do you have
The finances are probably the same.
Do you have concerns about that number for area? The overage?
No, because the overage is so inappropriate that
Do you feel that the state sees it that way?
apparently not. Apparently they do not see it that way. But
In this case, which counties have excess levies and resources?
Right, now the penalty piece is what small counties do. Does the overage, quote unquote, penalty impede us from making decisions? And that's exactly the kind of thing
I think as you step further, you take a look at Barber County, small counties, 16 counties, more like red, in the budgets. When you take a look at what was the purpose, 2320 accountability, what was the purpose of 2510 master plan, and how was that interconnected with evolving the RESA's back in 1972? And what they were able to do was provide equity. And the word equity came from Peterson Direct Decision that said everybody would be given, all students would be given equal opportunity. Didn't mean they had to have equal opportunity, so equal opportunity to perform. And as schools, I think the RESA's in essence were money saving and sharing programs. For example, I mean, a speech teacher, 5 periods, and they were using for 2 periods. With the RESA, they could do that without. Because you run under 18, 7A, you can do those kind of things. And if that person left in the middle of the school year, you can tell that person, well, we're sorry, but the reason you're here is now left, and you can remove that person from your staff, whereas the county got care of the rest of the year with that student. Things like that involve itself in the way you utilize the RESA to benefit those kinds that didn't have the means to offer at the same set. Equal opportunity for us children. And that's what brings me to an end from about the fact that a lot of small counties may call for the woodwork of the county, like Montague or somebody, or Capital, or whatever, large county can say, we really don't need resources because we have resources to take care of people we have. And so we've got guys in the French realize that they do the same. And really, your boards of education, it's your responsibility, but more so, I think it's the state board's responsibility under law to make sure that you'll have
So let's cap this part of it, and Howard will collect these. If you have other ideas, get them to him. But what we've got from here is possible charges to the school board and superintendents discussing this. Consider what services all RESAs provide. Because there may be services some RESAs provide that we don't have in our RESA. Which ones we use and which ones we might use. And those might go on a list of services that we should consider getting through a cooperative agreement, whether it's an ESC or something else. Another is, might we include in our discussion somebody who isn't looking at this the same way we do from the inside, but is using entrepreneurial eyes from the outside looking at it and would like to add some services to the list and explain to us why we ought to consider those as being good fodder for a cooperative agreement. Consider the services that are listed in the statute. You saw the definition of an annual plan in the glossary. It lists 23 different areas where the legislature said an ESC might want to, in its annual plan, have a strategy to develop and to make available. Are some of those things that cause us to start thinking, lubricates our thinking on that topic? What services do other states, ESAs, they call them education service agencies in most other states, what services do other states ESAs provide? And later talk about IAGs. And what other education-related services, in a general sense, do other state agencies provide? And let's look at those. Maybe those are things we haven't even thought of providing or securing from a collaborative agreement because they haven't been on the menu that's been in front of us. And really good question from Harder County. What are the critical, legally required services that RESAs currently provide us with? And we better have some arrangement for supplying where there's no longer a RESA that is capable of supplying those to us. And that may happen before June 30th in a lot of RESAs. You still have the obligation to follow kids' IEPs and placements and special ed, and you have other obligations that you can't say, well, we're sorry, the RESA went out, stopped offering audiologists, so we're not going to have any in our county anymore. Where do we need only part of a person? That came up before. That would indicate that if somebody could get a whole person and sell us part of them, we might use that service. And when can a collaboration avoid us going over formula, as was suggested? That may be an area where when we start talking about it, we think of some things we haven't before. There are undoubtedly other questions, but the purpose of this was just to get started thinking about what we can advise school boards to talk about when they sit down pretty soon, it better be pretty soon, to consider what they might even use a collaborative agreement of some sort for. We talked about a process. There's probably different ways to do this, but having a work session or a focused special meeting that's devoted just to an exercise like this, you may need more than one. And then after the work session, the idea of the board asking the superintendent to look into those and bring back pros and cons and pluses and minuses to a future board meeting where the board then maybe takes some decisive action to charge the board president, the superintendent, to get together with other superintendents and county boards to discuss whether indeed there is some interest in other counties to collaboratively provide the service.
One question, one comment. How many, Gary mentioned what their board has already done. How many boards represented here have had a similar discussion? It sounds like there's a structure that the board has.
We have it with the board, but we have a meeting with our central office.
All right.
And that conversation will happen next week.
Okay.
And Bill, I think that to take that a little further in conversation with the central office and the board members, one of the things that I think might be helpful now is that in regional meetings, have included on the agenda. I hear Tony's question all the time. is this whole concept of being over formula and that penalty? And, you know, how does that impact us as we move forward? As we move into ESCs, how will that over formula penalty, which everybody bears as a huge burden, I mean, that's like an act of lightning from God. You said something wrong, you know? and helping people to understand that at the regional school board meeting. Would that be,
Well, Mary Jane, one of the things we're doing at the fall conference is we're having a workshop relating to the school aid formula, and we can tilt it toward that particular question, because I think that's very valid.
Yeah, I think that
And
would really help.
that will answer some of the things that go into this.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah.
As RESA, as people.
That is-
RESA, it's shifting to us.
Yeah, if Dr. Payne approves, if Dr. Payne approves the program I outlined, that is one of the questions I've already asked on the outline. You know, what is the effect here? The next thing is, this is a question as well. Would it be advantageous to develop a uniform needs assessment document that you could use to figure out what your RESA provides, and then, you know, it will vary per area, and then what services you might want, some kind of evaluative way to look at that we could give out to all county boards at the fall conference? I think that's something that's on the agenda here, and I think to me, that's a good way to do this, because that way it's uniform, systematic. It will vary per region, but it also is one instrument that is uniform. So, yeah, checklist, exactly, right.
One of the other issues, I don't know, I just don't know, profit versus non-profit issues in our whether your livelihood is profit versus non-profit.
Right.
Because if somebody's comparing somebody who's really entrepreneurial, we now a for-profit agency, so whether we restrict any restrictions being able versus non-profit.
Right.
When these kind of services for the state.
Yeah, Nick, as I understand it, Howard can correct me, an ECS or a cooperative arrangement is made up of governmental entities, and so therefore they're not nonprofit entities. The association itself is covered by the Board of Risk and Insurance Management because in 1987, liability insurance for Board of Directors members became so expensive that Governor Moore passed a bill that requires all quasi-public entities to be covered by BRIM. But unless Howard corrects me, an ECS and a cooperative arrangement involves quasi-public or public entities that are corporate entities. A school board's a continuing corporation. So if you're a continuing corporation and you join two others, you've got three continuing corporations. An ECS is a corporation, and I think that would be not a corporation, but okay, I got that wrong. An ECS would be identified, Howard, you can correct me now, would be identified as a governmental entity of sorts for BRIM purposes, I think. That's a speculation, I could be wrong.
But apart from BRIM purposes, there's the question of whether you're doing something that takes you out of the nonprofit realm, so you now have to file a tax return and pay taxes and so forth.
Okay, I got you.
And without getting into the details, as long as you stay within the charge that the legislature's given you, which is pretty broad in terms of lifelong education and workforce development and so forth, because the legislature authorizes you to do that through a collaborative agreement or an ESC, you're doing it as county boards of education and just getting together. And unless you just completely abandon all that and say, you know, Ringling Brothers folded up its circuses. There are a lot of people that want to see circuses. We're going to develop a circus that's going to travel all over the country to the same arenas that Ringling Brothers did. We'll sell that cotton candy for $15 a stick, and those stupid flashlights at the General Market $40, and we'll make a fortune. Then you would have a problem, I think, because that's beyond the legislative charge clearly. And even though you're nonprofits, you can't escape the tax laws by saying, oh, we'll form a nonprofit corporation and build that shopping center out at LT with the bridge and make a lot of money. So there is something to be concerned about there, but I think the types of things we've been talking about are all within the legislative charge here, and they're all properly government functions.
I was going to say, I don't think we're trying to do anything real here, because the RESAs themselves have done a number of things for the fire departments, emergency services, and used what they've made to help provide personnel who would be there to help the schools.
I'm sorry. I know assumptions are always dangerous, but I would assume it would be the same thing with us contracting with a for-profit firm to do something. You're able to do that in the course of doing business.
And the fact that you can say we made money doing this doesn't convert you from a nonprofit to a profit. And every nonprofit has to make money or it goes out of existence. So that's a good question. Howard, I don't know if we have time to devote to this last question today, or whether it's something we need to show. Okay. But the last question was this. It's something to think about, even if we don't have time to get deep in here today. Once a school board decides that it really wants to invest some time now and some effort in trying to put together some sort of a collaboration to meet the needs it's identified, what is it about the needs that you have identified, or a particular need, that might suggest that you should try to do that through an ESC, or instead through some other type of collaborative agreement, which is the other thing the legislature opened up this year? In other words, are there some characteristics of certain things you might need that don't determine that, but kind of put a weight in the scale of forming an ESC, or put a weight on the side of a cooperative agreement? And one that I'll suggest to you, Howard and I talked about this, is the easiest one, so that's what I occurred to us, is time. Are we talking about a service that we just need next week in our school district in order to get something done, and we need somebody else's expertise to help us, or their facilities, or whatever? Well, we just need to do something for a year, but it's not going to go beyond that. It's a very limited, specific thing. That doesn't mean we don't form an ESC to do it, but to me, that would be a weight in the side of a different type of cooperative agreement, where we just sign some papers saying, we'll put this in, you'll put this in, here's how it'll be organized and managed, here's when it'll happen, and then it will be over, instead of an ESC. Now, if we're talking about, we have never been able to get an audiologist to move to our county. Even if they did, we can't afford them. And we're always going to have students with disabilities who need the services of an audiologist. So this isn't something we just need for next year, unless we know that there's some famous audiologist that's really retired to our county and wants to just help our school district. It seems to me that that puts a little weight in the pan of the ESC, because we're talking about something that's enduring, that we have to keep up. This audiologist may retire, we need another one in their place. Someone has to talk to the counties, and as Nick was saying, get enough interest in the counties to support the one person. So time is just one, it doesn't determine which way to go. But once we look at a need or a group of needs, one question to ask is this something we just need once? And that doesn't necessarily have to be time. Or is this something that we just need for next month? Or just for 1 year? And if so, then okay, well maybe that means we should at least investigate a cooperative agreement. But let's look at some other factors that may cause us in the end to say, this is all leaning in the direction of an ESC. And another factor that occurred to me is there an ESC that already provides this? And if so, even if it's a 1 month thing, it may be easier just to sign a contract with the ESC to provide that, rather than having to go out and get people to manage it and make all the arrangements. So the time may suggest a cooperative agreement of another type, but the same service may be one that's already offered by an ESC, and they can accommodate our time restraint, and it can be in and out. We don't have to make a long-term commitment. So that might mean we ought to think about an ESC. And I guess the challenge here is, and this is what we were getting at through our discussion, is are there other factors that don't make a decision for you about doing an ESC or another type of cooperative agreement, but would tend to cause us to think of one or the other on that, just on that particular factor.
Question.
Any suggestions? Howard, do we have time to talk about this, or we can cut to the chase?
I believe we do. This is a hard question, though, really, because it looks to me like the way I would look at it. You are, as a county board, are going to have all kinds of choices to make, and based on that and adapting to the needs you have as they change. So you may need an ESC, you may need a cooperative arrangement, which is less enduring than an ESC, or you may have that cooperative arrangement then develop into services from an ESC, which means that superintendents, this is the point that I'm hearing, and I think it's so valid. Superintendents in small counties are going to be spending a lot of time trying to figure out, to recommend to their board which way to get these particular services. So if you had a catalog of things that are available, that may, as you point out, that may make it easier to make that selection. It may be provided through technology for purpose. That's entirely possible. But I think that's part of it. And then part of it also would be trying to filter out what you do and don't need if you want a particular service and you want it sort of streamlined to your needs, but it's offered in such a way it's broadened beyond your needs. How do you get it straight into, fit your needs as like Barber County or another county? So that's another issue.
It seems like more off that there.
Excuse me?
He has a vision teacher. Barber County needs a vision teacher, maybe
Yeah.
2 periods a week.
Right.
The contract with him, there's an issue. The vision teacher was hired under the post of Marion County, so we had a vision teacher in Marion County. If you didn't post it for both counties, to not violate 1887A, because that person had 3 years to do it for it. We're going to charge him to pay for part of our vision teacher. The teacher says, I'm not
gonna
traveling.
drive. Yeah.
It's in the post.
That's 70 miles. Yeah.
You can have a cooperative agreement to agree to do that, but it would be in the posting.
Yeah, but it has to be in the posting prior to, because that employee has the right to know what the expectation is.
And I put on here, does the service entail hiring more people, and how many? Think of Mon County and the interventionists get hires from RESA 7. They've got a bunch of them. Yeah, how many interventionists do you think they use in Mon? Okay, 25. While that doesn't mean you have to use an ESC, it may be something that is less suited to a cooperative agreement just because of issues like the one you mentioned. I added this one that I just mentioned. It's a service we're considering one that really needs to be tailored to the needs of our county. In other words, no one else would want that service the way we want it. Maybe that goes in favor of a cooperative agreement. Just as this, if there's a lot of people who go in favor of an ESC, is there already an ESC that provides that? Is it a one-time thing? Maybe that weighs a little bit more on cooperative agreements. Is it more? Maybe that weighs on ESCs. There are probably other things, and we can involve the membership at the fall meeting of the School Board Association. But if you have other ideas, it's kind of an interesting question when you start thinking about particular needs
It seems like the more formal and permanent the need is, such as for an employee, then that probably leads toward an ESC, so you can get all those coverages. People might not want to sign on to be an audiologist with just a cooperative. It's kind of a bare bones agreement, and maybe that doesn't give them enough employment protection. If they agree to take the job, they're not going to get paid. Whereas an ESC is much more formal, and so it depends on the type of agreement. One of the cooperatives that we participated in a couple of years ago for this state is we have a 19-county food purchasing cooperative. There's not anyone who's an employee of that. The child nutrition directors in those counties just get together, and usually 2 or 3 end up, that's what everything is. Usually 2 or 3 end up doing the bulk of the work, but they get together and agree on, the prices for these various things, and then they bid that out as a cooperative, as a group. It saves everybody a lot of money. Now, if there had to be an employee who was like a nutritionist or something like that, then that probably would have to be an ESC. And so one of the things I really hadn't considered until I came here, and I was glad they did was the idea of at least getting some advice from somebody entrepreneurial, maybe even from private practice. I don't know about hiring that person to be full time, because I still like an education background person. But we don't think like that. You know, we just don't. You know, my son is in business and sales, and his job would drive me crazy. You know, but we don't think like they do. And they can look at something and see 5 things in it while we're trying to figure out what we're looking at.
One thing that the governor's office of the state board offered to RESA was to work with West Virginia Center for Business Development and gave us a business coach that we were working for free, and we contracted him as soon as we got out of that meeting that day. And then something, a big help.
I've also put on this list here of factors. Is it important that the person providing the service is paid below our scale? I think of the interventionist in Mon County. The reason Mon County uses the interventionist in RESA is that they're not entitled to be paid on the Mon County pay scale. They're not entitled to tenure and continuing contracts. They're not entitled to all the benefits of their employees. So for the same money, they can hire about a third more interventionists than if they were their own employees. So a collaborative agreement between 2 counties, boy, it has to be, a collaborative agreement can't hire someone. One of those counties has to hire the person, and if they do, then they plug into all that. If an ESC is doing it, that's the employer.
On the other hand, we are vision teachers, they get a bigger stipend than we do in the county because you can't find it, first of all. The second, we get what the county's paying for them. They don't mind paying for them. They can't do that in the county, they can't pay them for other teachers. But ESC, you can pay them more. You can set your own rates of pay in an ESC. Doesn't have to be in the state. I love that in the state. As long as you're licensed to provide the service, you can do that. Sometimes you have to get out of the box in order to do that. And it's entrepreneurial. When you say I can't attract someone, you can't take
So you can take, but you can do that not just with an ESC, you can do that with an cooperative agreement as well, right?
What, pay somebody more than our,
In a cooperative
than
agreement.
our pay scale provides. Whichever county ended up employing that person would have to amend its pay scale.
So it can be done, or counties may already do it, they may already create a stipend for, so that can be done.
Well, again, if you have thoughts about this, we'll cut this off right now, but if you have thoughts about other factors that a county board should think about, and that, once they know their needs, now deciding whether to do it through an ESC or through a cooperative agreement, share those with Dr. O'Call, and it will help fertilize the conversation. It's probably not a really good word to use. Fertilize the conversation at the fall conference.
I think Tori has an announcement.
So I did move the lunch location since we have a very full room to a cooler room with more table space. So it'll be upstairs. If you guys just want to take a few minute break, and there's restrooms right outside here, and there's actually some here. These are individual, those are more stalls. So if you want to do that, then we can walk upstairs in about 3 minutes, if that's good with everyone. So a cooler
One
location.
quick question, Dr. O'Call, that just requires a yes or no answer, because I know it's much time. And I heard someone mention Mr. Perry's task force earlier. Are we collaborating and working with them, or are we actually doubling it? Are they doing the same things that we're doing? I mean, that's just like I said, yes or no. I don't know.
You may defer to Jason, but no, I don't think we're really duplicating anything. I think we're really getting stuff started that will actually go to them in October. Is how.
Yeah, I can shut the door.
And AJ, you should have known you were going to get a yes or no
Oh, okay. Well, quantitative response. The short answer is no. But I had to get the other.
It always ends with, so no.
Yeah, I could.
Well, it was about
So much of it could be a substitute teacher training.
I don't know where all this is. I don't know where all this is. I mean, I'm sure there is.
You guys are fine. You can just walk around.
I saw how